be careful. Because what happens is I've got all these prayer lists at the front that I don't need to hold on to, and then all my notes that I just keep putting in the front of the Bible. So then if I have anything that is near the front of the Bible, I get messed up. But, all right, we're going to be in Mark this morning. The book of Mark. Now, we talked about how this last quarter was all about God's wrath on sin. Talking about how that God will have to bring about judgment towards sin and will have to have an effect, have to bring, I guess you should bring equilibrium, if I can say it, in terms of he cannot be around sin, so he has to destroy it. It's a perfection piece. Perfection cannot have communion with imperfection. Light cannot be with dark. There either is one or there's not. So basically what's going to happen is God is going to have to separate that out. And that's what we're looking at here about sin. We've seen that over the last bit, reiterated, the last 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 3 weeks. So now we're going to take the next step. So we've seen that God must judge sin. We've also seen that for us and our poor decision making, we're sinful. And so if we are sinful and God must judge sin, then there must be judgment that comes upon us. And unfortunately, as we've also seen, our righteousness isn't worth anything. All our good works, all the things I could do, it ain't worth nothing. It's filthy rags. So that's a really bad situation to be in. We'd be in a really bad spot if it was not for God's plan. If it's not for what He's done in terms of sending His Son to this earth for us, which we'll be talking about in 2 weeks in terms of the celebration of Easter. Without that event, we are hopeless. Completely hopeless. But God had a plan. So this morning we're going to talk about the final stages of that plan. We're going to be going through basically what happens just before Christ is to be crucified. And what this lesson is focusing on is, I think this is interesting, we're in Mark chapter 14. What's curious to me about this particular lesson is that the focus is not on the events per se, but the things, the weight that is on Christ, the pieces of what is surrounding, because we're setting everything up. We've seen the wrath. It must be poured out. And it's equivalent. So that's the other problem too, is that when we look at the Old Testament, there's a lot of imagery of cups, and we're going to talk about this morning. That the cup of wrath must be poured out. Like it gets too full, and when that time comes, it must be poured. And it's poured upon those who have put the wrath in it. And that's us. The problem is we're not able to even endure a little bit of it. If it wasn't for God's mercy, we'd been destroyed a long time ago. And so what we're looking at here is Christ is about to take all of it. Not just for me, or not just for you, but for every person throughout history at the same time. The totality of the cup of sin is going to be poured out upon Christ. And I think it was interesting as Trini and I were talking about as she was kind of going through her lesson with the kids. Her exact words were, this is a really heavy lesson for the kids. It's a really hard lesson for the kids. So we've got to be very, I won't say nuanced. The lesson kind of helps bring it down to the age-appropriate way of discussing it. But this is a hard thing to talk about. You know, I brought up this. I'll start off with the story. It's a poor one, so just bear with me. I remember as a kid, I was a teenager, because I was in the late teens class at Calvary, and our teacher brought up this story, and I don't believe this is a true story, because it just can't be, I don't think. But there was a man who was on death row, and the thing that happened, he had been going to steal something, and then he accidentally killed someone in the process. And it was not intentional. And he'd always claimed his innocence in terms of the actual murder itself. But, of course, he was convicted as a murderer, an intentional murderer of this person. And so he was on death row. And they said that his mother came to visit him every single day. That she would come see him in the prison every day. And that she reiterated him over and over again that she wanted him to have a good life and that she wanted him to change his ways. And his answer was always, well, Mom, there's no hope for me. At the end of the tunnel, I'm dead. There's nothing I can do. I'm going to die. There is no second chance. And so his mom would come in every day And she would, try and bring him a little food and things, and he was always dismissive of her, never mean, but just dismissive of her viewpoint. So the day finally comes, and they take him out of the cell, and it's his day, his execution day. They take him out of the cell, and they lead him down the hall. To the right, there's the execution room. He knows that that's where his end is. And so as he goes down, they take him to the side, and all of a sudden they turn left. And they take him outside, and they give him a bag of his stuff, as he had when he came in. And they say, "You're free to go." And he says, "I don't understand, but this is my day, I'm supposed to die." And they look at him, and the words they said in the little lesson was, "The price has already been paid." And in the bag was the hat that his mom always wore, as a little crocheted, little hat she wore inside of his bag, and she had taken his place. Now, that's a very, I don't think that's possible, but it's an interesting story, right? It gets across the same feeling. What we see here is we understand a mother's love for a son. We understand the willingness to go and take over a sacrifice. What we're looking at here with Christ is something that's infinitely more heavy and infinitely more, influential in terms of what will happen. And that is going to be weighing on him here. We don't talk about this scene enough. I don't think we discuss what happens in this garden well, to give it the gravity of what it is. Now, that's a lot of intro, so let's read the verses here on the lesson 4. That's Mark chapter 14, verse 32. I'll read the light. There's a lot to read. I'll read the light and you read the dark of Mark chapter 14, verse 32. It says, "They came to a place which was named Gethsemane. And he saith to his disciples, Sit ye here, while I shall pray."
And he taketh with him James and John, and began to weep sore, very heavy.
And saith unto them, My soul is exceeding sorrowful unto death. Tarry ye here, and watch.
And he went forward a little, and fell on the ground, and prayed that if it were possible, one thou might pass him.
And he said, Abba, Father, all things are possible unto thee. Take away this cup from me. Nevertheless, not what I will, but what thou wilt.
And he findeth them asleep, and saith unto Peter, Simon, sleepest thou? Couldst thou not watch?
Watch ye and pray, lest ye enter into temptation. The spirit truly is ready, but the flesh is weak.
And he went away and prayed, and spake the same words.
When he returned, he found them asleep again, for their eyes were heavy, neither wist they what to answer him.
And he cometh a third time, and saith unto them, Sleep on now, take your rest, it is ready. The hour is come, behold, the Son of Man is betrayed
into the hands of the sinners.
Rise up, let us go. Lo, he that betrayeth me is at hand.
And immediately while he spake, cometh Judas, one of the 12, and with him a great multitude of swords and staves, from the chief priests and scribes and the elders.
And he that betrayed him had given them a token, saying, Whomsoever I shall kiss, that same is he. Take him and lead him away safely.
And as soon as he was come, he goes straightway, and said, Master,
Kissed.
And they laid their hands on him and took him.
And one of them stood by
and drew his sword, and smote the servant of the high priest, and cut off his ear.
And Jesus answered and said unto them, Are ye come out, as against a thief, with swords and with staves, to take me?
I was there with you in the temple teaching, and you took me not, but the scriptures must be fulfilled.
They all forsook him and fled.
And there followed him having cast the naked blood, and the young man laid hold upon him.
And he left the linen cloth and fled from them naked. Terry, would you mind praying over the lesson for us?
Heavenly Father, we thank you again for the beautiful sunshine. We thank you, Lord, for getting us through another week. I pray, Lord, for Brother Lucas, you give him the words that we need to hear today. And God direct us in these things we ask. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, brother. Now, to talk about this lesson as a whole, I think it's important we understand what is happening here in all of the Gospels. They're giving us Mark's. Mark's accounts is interesting, because you remember we went through Mark. Mark is written to the Gentiles. It's entirely written to a group of people who would not know or be as familiar with the prophecies that the Jews would have known about in terms of their culture. They also would not have the same background and traditions and understandings. So this is going to be a very verse-by-verse take of what's happening. There's other things that are going to be included in other parts of the Gospels that are important to what's happening, because this is a really heavy scripture. This is, and in fact, I was reading. We don't think about this well, and boy, we don't show it well. You know, you ever seen the pictures of Jesus in the garden, or even Jesus with the disciples? Because there's a lot of pieces in this that's going to be different. Christ, and this is important to the whole entire piece, is not handsome. He's not unique. He's not wearing white robes while everyone else wears brown robes that magically stay white. He's a normal person. There's nothing that makes him stand out. In fact, it's actually the point where, you know, when we look at why Judas gives him the kiss on the cheek, it's because he looked like everyone else. He wasn't like uniquely different. It wasn't like, hey, oh, it's Jesus. It's the guy with green hair. There he is. He looked like everyone else. He was hard to distinguish from the other 12 men, in this case 11, that were with him. Why? Because he was the same. He wasn't unique. And so that's an important part to this, because the other piece is he was human. Now he is God, but in this, understand he is human. He is going to endure great suffering. And unfortunately, he knows exactly what he's going to endure, because God's already told him. He's already been given that foreknowledge. And the thing is now he's going to sit there in his human body. There's some dread here. I'll say this, no one's going to probably talk about this. There's some anxiety here. Have you ever thought about that Christ had some anxiety? I would too. Now, did it take something that no one else has ever faced to do it? Yes. Was he anxious about it like the day-to-days? No. But I also would have been in the same place. And that's because the other piece is, understand the only reason, because this is the part that I think is so important. This is God. This is the creator of the universe. It is the one that is higher than all, that is now sitting in the middle of a garden, alone, we'll figure that out in a second, alone, bearing the weight of the sin of the world as a human. As the creation rather than the creator. That's a heavy piece. And here's the thing, you know why he's there? Because of me. It's my sin. There's no other reason for him to be here. It's you and I are the only reason he is in this garden, facing down what is going to be one of the most brutal killings that has ever been done. And he should have been on his throne. He should have been in heaven. He should have been amongst those angels and the beasts and all the things that praise his name. He should have been exalted. He should have been clothed in his glory, and yet he's going to be clothed in droplets of blood because of my sin and yours. That's a sacrifice he makes. That's a humongous piece. I'm not here to be like, let me shame you, but it's a part of, there's a heaviness to what's here. We talk about this because we focus on the disciples, and that's definitely a piece to it. But if you really look at what Christ is going through, no one can say he hasn't gone through what I've gone through. And the beautiful piece is you may be facing down tragedy, you may be facing down hardship, you may be facing down a lot of anxiety and fear. Christ knows he's been there. He knows what it feels like in your stomach. He knows what it feels like in your head. And I can promise you that there's a reason why it talks about why he is able to relate to us. It's also the reason why he's the one who's over our judgment. That's a whole entire piece for God I don't have time to get into. I got to move. Now, verse 32. It says they came to a place which was named Gethsemane. This is an important piece. This garden we talk about a lot. We have nice songs about it. In fact, Trendy was singing one this morning because it brought it up in this. She was singing the one, Lest I Forget Gethsemane. Do you know what the word Gethsemane means? This is important. I thought it was really good that the lesson brought it out, especially in this context. Because we talk about this garden a lot. And we talk about words all the time. Like we reference words all the time as Christians, but in terms of what is actually being discussed, we don't really talk about all the pieces. This word for Gethsemane is really important because, I want to make sure I get the exact phrasing right, because I don't want to say it the wrong way. The whole entire piece is, it's the mashing of grapes. That's what was happening here. There's a word for it. It's not judgment, but essentially what they're going to do is they took these two big grindstones and they put all the olives in here, because this is the Mount of Olives. They're going to put olives. They do the same thing with grapes this time, and you smush them and then turn the stones. It's a piece of, you would bring these two stones together, create pressure, and then take that pressure and squeeze every bit of that oil out of the olives. Right? Now, why is this important? What is getting ready to happen in this moment? This is a foreshadowing that the Bible is, once again, if you think about the way God set this up, He put Christ in a place where the people years and years before had called it Gethsemane. A place where they would take these olives, grind them out to get the oil out of them. And what is going to happen here is that same thing is going to happen to Christ, in terms of He is going to be the representation for sin for us. He's going to have to endure that same, if you will, not destruction, but essentially that same grinding piece. He's going to take our place. I'm the one who's supposed to be separated from God. That's what He's getting ready to do. It's the same process. It's going to be a grinding down, a breaking down of Christ in this place, well, within the next bit, because He's going to be up on Golgotha soon, which also has important pieces for words, but that's irrelevant. We'll get to that later. So, and not today. He is in Gethsemane. This is a place He went often to pray. This is not something that the disciples were unfamiliar with. They were here a lot. They spent a lot of time here. It's one of the places He enjoyed praying, which also makes it even more sad to me. It's, if you will, if I can use a very poor phrase from our time period, this is a safe place. This is where He goes to spend time talking to His Father. It's the same place He's going to be taken to be murdered. So, and they came to a place which was named Gethsemane, and He said to His disciples, "Sit ye here while I shall pray." We've talked about this before in other contexts, but it's one of the things I've been trying really to do a better job of, because it's something I struggle with. I think every Christian does. Understand, when Christ says this, He's asking His disciples to pray with Him. And He takes, not just, because those disciples, that's all of them, that's all 11 that are with Him, because Judas isn't here right now. This commandment is not to just the 3 He's going to take, but it's to these 11. Pray with me. But He's going to take His top 3, right? His Peter, James, John. Why does He pick them? There's a lot of questions. The lesson talked about that they ended up being leaders of the church, but really, in all honesty, all of the disciples were leaders. Now, Peter, James, and John were amongst the top, but it is important that these were His inner circle. They always had been. They'd seen things. They'd seen wondrous things the other disciples hadn't got a chance to see. So He takes them with Him a little bit further. It says He taketh with Him Peter, James, and John. And notice this. Now, this is Christ. And began to be sore amazed and to be very heavy. Sore amazed is almost always used when someone sees something like miraculous or astounding, and they are taken aback with what they have seen. When Lazarus is brought back from the dead, when we see the miracles, there are often people who describe there's a sore amazed, that they were amazed at God's hand in certain things. If you look in the Old Testament, that the people watched things and they were amazed at what God did. That is not what's happening here. This is Christ looking out about what's getting ready to happen to Him and the magnitude of it all hitting at once. See, this is the thing. If I can make it a little more human for you, this is the stage fright. This is a poor example. I'm well aware. I'm not trying to undersell it. But understand, this is just before you go out and you have to go do the thing you got to do. It's all good and fun and games when you're out behind the curtain and you've been practicing at home. It's a different stage when you've got to pull back that curtain and all of a sudden you're on stage by yourself. When you have to realize what you actually have to do. It's the same thing when people will talk about, like, I'll be willing to lay down my life for someone. It's a very big difference when you're faced with it and you actually look at it. When you look down and stare down the barrel of a gun, there's a very big difference than saying it's sitting in a nice warm chair. And so here, Christ has lived for 33 plus or minus years, and all of a sudden, Not that he didn't know. Not that he didn't realize. He knew it was coming. He knew what it was. But there's a realization that hits. Because we're human. Sore amazed. And then what happens? He's heavy. Why? Not only is he looking down at what the things he's going to have to suffer, he realizes he's not to leave. He loves his disciples. He cares about them. You know what else he loves? He loves the Pharisees. You know what else he loves? He loves the people. The same people who, not too long ago, maybe a couple of days before, had been going, Hosanna, King of the Jews, are going to be screaming out in less than 24 hours, from this, not from that event, but in less than 24 hours, they're going to be screaming out, crucify him. I'd be heavy too. Now, you see this. Now, I will think about this. Has Christ ever been described as heavy? I was thinking about this morning as I was reading through it again. Has he ever been described as heavy anywhere else in the Bible? Do you ever see him express these emotions? We've only seen him express emotion, really, about 2 or 3 times. We see it at Lazarus. When Lazarus' tomb, he weeps. Here we see this anxiety, this heaviness. And the thing about it, I think is interesting. You know when your friends are upset. You know when your family's upset. You can tell. The disciples, specifically these 3, knew he was going through something. Could not know. It says he was heavy. And he turns these 3 disciples in this very difficult, hard place where things are, he is, not, like I said, I'm using the word anxious. I feel like that's demeaning in a way I don't mean for it to be. There's anxiety, there's a heaviness to him. He turns to these three trusted people who are to lead the church, and he says, my soul is exceeding sorrowful unto death. He said, they don't even have to guess. He tells them, I am burdened. My soul is sorrowful to the point that I wish, not that I wish I was dead, but that I should be dead. I could be dead. Tarry ye here and watch. Now he's told them to pray. This word for watch doesn't mean keep your eyes open and stare out in the sun. It's the idea of stay sober, stay vigilant. It's the same idea in the terms of the Bible. He's asking them to be watchful for me. They didn't even write down a prayer request. That's how I read this. Now I don't want to throw on the disciples. It's not the focus this morning. Because the focus is that Christ is in this place because of my sin. It is my sin that put him here, and it is the fact that he is going to have to carry it to the cross that is the burdening piece, that when he goes to pray here in just a minute, that it's not here in Mark, that when he prays that his blood vessels in his head pop. Under great stress, this is a very common thing amongst humans, that we will bleed, we will sweat drops of blood. It is common. That's not biblical, magical, he was magic and he made things. It is a phenomenon that happens when under great duress. And he says, hey, will you watch with me? Now, how many times are we the same? And I'll say this is something I've been praying about, so I've got this part. I want to have the same burden for those prayer requests that you have, so I can pray for them the right way. Because a lot of times I don't. See, you come in and you say, hey, I wish you'd pray for my mom. She's going through something really hard. And you probably spent nights crying. Maybe for your kids. Maybe for someone you care about. You spent nights crying about it. I don't have that. You know how many nights I spent crying about it? I haven't. Because I didn't even know. But if you come tell me, hey, I am exceedingly sorrowful unto death. Please pray for my children. Please pray for my mom. Please pray for my dad. Please pray for my neighbor. And then I don't even remember. You know how I'm terrible. You know how I am. If I don't write it down, I don't remember it. It's worse than sleeping. Because that's the thing, is Christ says, will you watch? Will you pray? And then he goes, and he falls onto the ground. I'd never thought about that. Trinity's lesson pointed that out. He doesn't get down gingerly. He falls on his face to pray. You know, sometimes you just don't have the strength to keep walking. You just need to lay down. You got to get down on your knees. And here he gets down and prays that if it were possible that the hour might pass from him, he said, this prayer is important. It says, Abba, Father. Now, if you are familiar with the New Testament, you'll know what this means. This is not, the word for Abba is important, especially when mixed with Father. What this is a cry for, this is a son who cries for dad. This is daddy. That's what we would call in our day and age. It's an affectionate term. It's, if you will, a pet name. It's something that only those who are close together will have. Someone who's close. You don't, as you become an adult and you become a teenager and like you want to like really stick it to your parents, you start calling them by their first name, or you just call them dad or mom and you don't say it. This is a cry, the exact opposite. It's a child who's fallen and they are crying out for their parents, daddy. All things are possible unto thee. Take away this cup from me. Now it talks about the cup. Now there's a couple of different references to cups in the Old Testament. I thought the lesson did a good job of talking about what this could mean. The way I've always heard it taught is that this particular piece is the cup of what is about to be endured. That the cup stands for like the fortune or thing that is to come. It's a burden one must bear. And that is biblical. That is not an unbiblical teaching. That is something we see in Psalms. But it also could refer to that cup of wrath. It's a similar piece in terms of that. The Bible talks about that there is a wrath that must be built up. And it, you know about John Stein, I think it's John Steinbeck, the grapes of wrath. So the thing is that's actually a biblical concept. It actually talks about in the Old Testament that the grapes of wrath would be ground in, that there would be a cup that overflows with that wrath. That's what he's going to also have to endure. The wrath of the sin, the wrath that it should accompany the sin that I am deserving of. And not just me, but every human that's ever lived all at the same time. It says, do you take it from me? But, nevertheless, not what I will, but what thou wilt. Now I'll say this about prayer. I think people I feel like there's been bad teaching on prayer in my life. I don't know, hopefully in your case that's not the case. But in my life I know there's been some teaching in terms of, well, you should only pray in certain ways with this, that, and I do believe there's a respect that needs to be shown. But here, Christ knows God's will. He knows it. And he still says, if it's possible, could you find another way? I think it's one of the things, I remember there was one of the kids asked for a prayer for their kitty one time, their sick kitty. We all go get a laugh, that's cute. The truth of the matter is that I don't think there's anything wrong with that. We might find it absurd, but to God that's a prayer. And it's the same thing, I'll say it's just as absurd as praying for someone, like genuinely, in my heart of hearts, the way I should be approaching things is that instead of hoping that, Kamani dies, and it's like, oh good, we got the leader of Iran, he's gone, should have been praying for him to be saved. In my heart, I should be praying when I heard about Jeffrey Epstein. It shouldn't have been, boy, I want to see him brought to justice. It should have been, Lord, that man needs your salvation. And that should have been my prayer. Here's the thing, is that absurd? Yeah, it's absurd. It's crazy. But that's what I should have been praying. And here, what I think is interesting is that we see Christ is willing to pray for the thing that all the people would have said is impossible. Even he knew it wasn't possible, technically. And yet he said, God, everything is possible through you. If it's possible, find another way. But if not, if this is your will, I'll do it. That's a pretty good prayer. Pray for the things you don't think are possible and then say, God, I'll follow your will either way. So, here he is, he's burdened, he's fallen down, he's sweating drops of blood, which also, imagine being the disciples seeing that one come back. You've been over there asleep. And the man who asked you to watch comes back and face is bloody. I was taking a nap, Lord. Anyway, it says, but he cometh and findeth them sleeping, and saith unto Peter. What an interesting piece. Now, just not too long before it, Christ is the one who gave Peter the name Peter. Right? He said, you were known as Simon. Now I'm going to call you Peter, which is Petra. And then he says, and then this verse gets misinterpreted by everyone, and it drives me nuts. It says, upon this rock, which is Petros, I will build my church. So he says, you are a small rock. But upon this rock, referring to himself, this rock, the foundation, Petros, is what I will build my church on. But he's the one who gave him the name Peter. Here he doesn't call him Peter. He says, Simon, you slipped back into your old ways. Sleepest thou? Remember what Peter said yesterday? Lord, I'll fight with them to the death. If anybody tries to come for you, I'm going to fight them. Don't you worry, we'll be here. Couldn't he? He says, couldst not thou watch 1 hour? Now, here's the thing. We're guilty of the same thing. Do we pray? Do we take things as seriously as we should? Watch ye and pray. Now this is interesting. Then Christ gives them a teaching. He's not mean to them. His question here is not mean-spirited. It is meant to cause self-reflection. This is not him saying, Simon, sleepest thou? Couldst thou not have been as well? Couldst not thou watch for 1 hour? What do you mean? You couldn't sleep for 1 hour? No. It's gentle. How do I know that? Look at the next verse. It says, watch ye and pray, lest ye enter into temptation. The spirit truly is ready, but the flesh is weak. He doesn't come up to him and yell at him. He doesn't slap him awake. I don't know. I wonder if he even gently shook him. He might not even say, hey Simon, why are you asleep? Couldn't you watch for 1 hour with me? He says, watch ye and pray, lest ye enter into temptation. And this is the part 2. Notice here, in Christ, who is stressed, bleeding out. There's bleeding sweat drops, or sweat drops of blood. Man, I keep getting that backwards. Boy, this is good. While this is happening, what does he think about? Peter, watch ye and pray, lest ye enter into temptation. He said, Peter, I'm concerned about you. I asked you to be concerned for me a minute ago, but it's okay. But for you, make sure you're praying. Not even for me at this point, but for you. I know you want to. Your spirit's ready. Man, that flesh is weak. Isn't that something? And honestly, I think that's probably the most true statement of most Christians. A lot of times I do think a lot of people want to be ready, but we haven't learned to overcome our flesh yet. Our spirit takes our flesh takes us down because our spirit really wants to, but we don't. It's the same thing we see with Paul in the New Testament. Verse 39 says, again he went away and prayed and spake the same words. He prays again, heavy. It's hard. And when he returned, he found them asleep again, for their eyes were heavy. Now, that's me, okay? I know this. I fall asleep sometimes just sitting in a chair. I've been in the middle of a conversation. Gone. I know what it's like. I know how bad it feels to fall asleep in the middle of talking to someone and feel awful about it. I know. So I get this. I understand it better than I want to. And he comes to him a second time. And said they didn't know what to say. He says, neither wist they what to answer him. They didn't know what to say. What are you saying? He asks you to stay awake. Now here's the thing. I say that, and here's the other piece. That's me. If I get to sitting, I have to be real careful. Because even if I'd go in with good intentions. I mean, if it's warm and it's quiet, I'll fall asleep. I can't help it. I get it. I know. I'm the worst. I had to apologize to Richard and Reese all the time. Why? I know. I understand. That's why you'll never hear me say a word about it. I get it. You're good in my eyes. I understand. You're here. That's all. Like if God brought you here, that's what you want from me. I understand. But the piece is here. This is a bit different situation. Christ is just asking to pray with you. Think how heavy it is for him. Then he says, and then he cometh the third time. They're asleep then too. He says, sleep on now and take your rest. It is enough. The hour has come. Now this is not a mean thing. Once again, he says, sleep on now and take your rest. It is enough. It wasn't what he wanted. He said, what we've got now, it will work for what it is. It is enough. Why? Because the hour's come. You gave what you had. It will be what it is be. It says, behold, the Son of Man is betrayed into the hands of sinners. Now here's the thing. You understand this is a big statement. His whole entire piece was, could you pray just a little bit? Why? Now I'm going to be gone. From this moment on, I will be tortured. I will be beaten. I will be killed alone. That was a prayer. Would you pray for me? Because I'm about to go through something really hard. You don't know, somebody might be getting ready to go through something really hard to bear praying for them. Rise up, let us go. Lo, he that betrayeth me is at hand. Now, of course, this is the part I talked about earlier, why I made sure to mention it. Immediately while he spake, cometh Judas, one of the 12, with him a great multitude, with swords and staves from the chief priests and the scribes and the elders. People thought he was going to run away. Judas, this shows, and I'll say this in terms of understanding, shows nobody understood what Christ was talking about. He already told him, he told him he's going to die. They just had the conversation. Judas was there. He was at the Last Supper, like a couple hours before. He knew. And yet they showed up and said, like, well, he might try to run away. Well, I'm going to run away. What are you talking about? And further than that, if you think about the offense he's done, he hasn't done anything. Even when they bring the accusation against him, it's blasphemy. It's not thievery. It's not murder. He said mean words against God. That's what he's getting arrested for. That's the whole reason they're going to kill him. Which, in terms of the Old Testament, blasphemy was a serious offense. And don't get me wrong, it was worthy of death, right? Like, it's an important piece that's there. But you didn't have to show up with an army. Now, to be fair, there was 11 other men with him. So that's also a piece to keep in mind. And Judas wouldn't have known that. So they bring these people with them, armed. And it's not just the armor or the warriors who are there. They're the police, if you will. You have the priests and the scribes and the elders. Boy, they didn't show up much else. They didn't show up to anything except to complain. But all three of them showed up to make sure they saw Jesus get arrested. Ain't that good? They didn't turn up for none of the rest of them. Weren't there and people getting baptized. They was there causing trouble for half of it. And they show up in small groups. Now they're going to all show up because, boy, howdy, we're finally getting rid of him. He that betrayed him, who gave him a token, said, whomsoever I shall kiss, that is he. Take him and lead him away safely. Now, this is because, once again, Jesus is just a normal guy. He don't look special. He's not wearing I'm Jesus on his shirt. He doesn't have a fancy robe that sticks out differently than others like we see in paintings. He doesn't have super long hair that's different than everyone else's and like beautiful, luxurious L'Oreal hair that's coming out of the shower. This is just normal guy. He is a regular Jewish man. Here he is, the guy. And he walks, and they go, so which one is he? Because here's the other piece too, because I want to point this out. These are the chief priests and the scribes and the Pharisees, all these people are here. They don't know which one he is. They couldn't pick him out of a lineup. That's how unnoticeable it is. Because here's the thing, if they were going to show up, you think that they've argued with him in a temple, surely they'd know who he is. I mean, you would think. Clearly he didn't have any distinguishing features. So Judas had to show them which one it was. The person who'd spent the most time with him. And that's so. Now, go straightway to him and saith, Master, Master, and kissed him. Verse 46, and they laid hands on him and took him. And now, one of them that stood by, we know that's Peter from the book of John, drew a sword and smote a servant of the high priest and cut off his ear. Now, this is important. Peter did say he'd do fighting. He did say he would fight. He did one thing. And then Jesus rebukes him. He takes that man's ear up off the ground that's been lopped off, touches it to this man's head, and all of a sudden he's healed. If I am one of the people there, I am concerned. Now I'm glad I got the weapons, because what is that? You might not have seen one of the miracles for yourself. You just watched the man's ear get cut off and then reattached. Also, why? Because this is another piece too. What a witness. Here he is, he's being arrested to be taken to be killed. And his concern is this poor man with his ear, who came to arrest him. Hey buddy, sorry about that. We shouldn't have done that to you. That's Jesus, isn't it? Now, the other piece to it though is he does, reprimand them. He says, are you come out as against a thief with swords and with staves to take me? I was daily with you in the temple teaching, and you took me not. But the scriptures must be followed, or must be fulfilled. Isn't that interesting? He even tells him, he's like, this to me is the precursor to Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. You came at me with swords and staves, and you came at me as if I was a thief, but I know it's what you had to do. Because that's what the scripture said. Father, forgive them. They know not what they do. Isn't that something? Now, and they all forsook him and fled. All those disciples, We're with you, ride or die, Jesus. Not anymore. And it says John followed afar off, but I thought about this morning. I'd like to think I'd stay around, but I thought I genuinely was having a serious conversation with myself as I was eating breakfast. You know, I think this is where I'd be. My thought would be, I'm going to run away, but I'll come back and get him. I'll come back and find a way to save him. That'd be my thoughts. Well, I'm still forsaking him. What use is that? Good job. I have no friends to stand beside them, and they all ran away. I don't know that. I don't know they're going to try and help. Now, the last two verses are odd, and I'm done. I love these two verses because I'm curious. It's a curiosity of the Bible that doesn't really matter. Oh boy, it's an interesting one. Because verse 51 says, there followed him a certain young man, don't have a name, having a linen cloth cast about his naked body. Why? Because this thing, he's not wearing clothes. Which probably means he was probably wearing the undershirt piece, because to be naked would have been atrocious with him. I mean, it's kind of implied that's kind of the case here. But you most likely have been wearing the very inner garment, which would have been considered naked. But in the way I read this, I actually think he probably wasn't. So all he has is this linen cloth. In the middle of a garden, in the middle of the night. Your guess is as good as mine why he's there. And why he doesn't have any clothes on. I don't know. Doesn't say. But it says he was there with a linen cloth and about his naked body, and the young men laid hold on him. They see him, they're like, oh, he must be a disciple too. He's in the bushes. Look, one of them was trying to hide. So they go and grab him. Now this is interesting. Why is he there? He's also watched all this happen, by the way. Seen all of it. And it says, and he left the linen cloth and fled from them naked. He pulled a Joseph. He left his coat and ran. We were talking about this morning because there's a couple things about it. Now, it's part of the reason why they had to go get Jews to identify Jesus is they're there in the middle of the dark. This is the middle of the night. It's dark outside. They're not there in the daytime. They're it's dark. There's a reason why the disciples are sleeping. So they got torches. You don't have flashlights. There's no mags that can throw up and get in somebody's face to be able to tell who Jesus is. So they do this by torchlight. So they can't hardly tell who Jesus is anyway. That's why they got to have Jews too. That's the whole part of this. If they couldn't tell who Jesus was, and this isn't mentioned in any other gospel, there's only one person we really know who would know who this is. There is some debate over this, but in my opinion, there's only one person who knew who this was. That's Mark.
Yeah.
That's Mark himself.
Yeah.
Why was he in the garden? Huh? You got something. You got to give it to me. I just said you got something.
I was reading about it, and that came up about a year ago in Sims. Mark was a very young guy then, He came along later, and he was taught stuff that he wrote down and looked them up. Well, just prior to that was Last Supper, and some think that Mark's mother had a big house and she hosted this supper, And but he ran about but at the distance watching and come out of the house partially dressed, But two thoughts about naked. Naked applies to being ashamed too.
Sure does.
And it's not really naked. We jumped to the conclusions by saying very little clothes, he was naked. But he would rest away, and we do too. We shy away or turn away when we not confident, not leading, but we're ashamed. He is ashamed of what's happened in the fleeing and the desertion. So, naked kid made, he ran away ashamed.
Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think that's a completely important piece to see. Because the thing is, if you look at also, it was rare that anyone went unclothed at all.
Yeah.
Mainly because you couldn't. Weather conditions aren't great when it's like hot outside all the time. Not good for your skin. Because they don't have humid hot. It's just hot. Not good for you. So you would often wear like that inner garment that was like a really thin layer. The whole entire piece it was there to absorb sweat and keep your body cool. But you were considered naked if you were seen in it. And that's usually, I mean, like, my thought, I've not heard the part about his mom's hosting the feast, but that's a really cool idea. Because that makes sense. He would have seen everything going on and been curious about what was happening. That would explain why he was there. But here's another piece. We actually don't know who it is. That's a theory. But there's also an early Christian writer, and I say early, I don't mean like circa 1200 AD. So, you know, who said that John Mark had never met Christ. So now, would he know? We don't know. And does it really matter? No. But I do think that in terms of the shameness, because this is actually part I would tie back in, there's a reason why your lesson ended here. Because I agree. That's exactly what this whole piece is. See, while Christ is going through, because this is the whole entire piece of the lesson, if I can bring it back together to the whole piece of sin and the idea of what is going to happen. Christ is here. He is getting ready to bear and become the sin. He's going to be separated from his Father. He's going to endure great physical torture, mental torture. There's going to be a whole bunch of bad things happen to him to the point that, and spiritually, he's going to be separated from his Father. He's about to endure one of the worst things that could happen to any person at any point in time ever. While that's happening, the disciples flee. They run. Now, for whatever reason, I don't know that it's all out of fear. Sometimes it may have been out of something else. But they all leave regardless, and he is by himself. He is forsaken by himself. And then here, I think John Mark, and the reason why it's included in here, even if it's not John Mark, is that it's important to the story because that is me. Should be. Ashamed.
Yep.
Ashamed and naked. That's where I am in terms of when I would stand before God because I have no defense. And had I been taken, had I been pulled away, I have nothing to say before God except for I am sinful and I am naked and that is all I have. I am ashamed and guilty. I deserve nothing but hell. But God sent his Son. Why? Because he loved the world. Whosoever believeth in him shall not perish, but shall have everlasting life. Now we'll get to that later. We'll get to the happy part. So the hard part is it's a hard lesson. Not an easy one.
You know, thinking the Garden of Eden, when they've done something wrong and they realized it, they closed themselves, but they was ashamed.
Mm-hmm. You're
Same-
completely right.
Same purple.
I don't remember if it was in the lesson or if it was in one of the things I was studying, but they were talking about how the difference between the two gardens. Because in the Garden of Eden, you see a sin enter into the world because Adam and Eve choose willfully to sin against God. Here we see Christ choose willfully to do God's will, and he's let out of the garden, and here he goes to die. They were allowed to live. It's like all the contrast of the two, how the first Adam fails and the second Adam follows God's will, but in both cases, there's some similarities and contrast. It was an interesting piece in terms of how that would work. I'd probably preach real good. I don't know. We'll see. I might have one day. But, so that's your lesson this morning. Not uplifting, not a happy one, but it's true. And so I'll say this as my last piece is this is why it's so important that we talk to people about salvation. That's the sacrifice Christ made. That's a great, great amount of suffering. We hadn't even made it to the torture. This was just a piece before. All because he loved you. Because he cared about you. It's a good man.
Another side lesson within this story is, I think, the importance of prayer. See, even the disciples, spirit and the flesh, always war, And even though their intentions was to support him and do good but they intended, but they didn't pray first. We intend to do stuff, go there, help people. But if we intend, and the flesh is weak, and we make mistakes, so to help us complete the task that we intend to do, we must need help. That help is prayer first.
Yes.
And we don't always do that. They certainly didn't do that. They went to sleep.
We sure did. Why? Because they're tired. You're right, and I agree. I think that prayer would have changed it.
Yeah.
Had they been awake praying, I'd probably been a different story. I agree. That's good insight. Okay. Anything else this morning? Thank you. And thank you for your good opinion. And I promise we'll be respectful as we go into it. All right. Let's go get the little ones.